Welcome to the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live. I'm Tony Haggerty, and as you can see, I'm joined by the amazing Alison McConnell. Alison, how are you today?
A phrase you don't hear every
day. Well, speaking of amazing, Alison, Ange won his first Manager of the Month award for October, and it's well deserved because Celtic had a pretty amazing month, didn't they?
Yeah, I think undefeated. I think the only blip would have been that Livingston game, really, that came, the draw. But other than that, I think it was a very productive month, a really solid month. I think you can see the direction that Ange Postecoglou is wishing to take the team. I think the award was merited. I think Celtic have been fairly consistent throughout. And I think when you factor in the European results too, I think, there's been significant cause for optimism.
I was reading his comments yesterday, Alison, and he really did kind of deflect it away from himself. And in the photo they got taken with the award, all the guys were in it. All the backroom staff were in it. And this is what he said. It was a good little period for us as we've been unsettled in the previous one, and results and performances have been up and down. So we had to get some consistency and gain some momentum. The whole group has been outstanding in the last sort of 7 games that we have had in this period, both domestically and Europe. And I have to give credit to all the players, coaching staff and the medical team, because I have felt a lot more settled as we have ever been since the start of the season, and that has been reflected in results. We have a strong foundation to kick on. The award is great, but is a reflection of how the group is developing, and it is really important that people don't think that this is come on the back of something magical I am doing. It is a whole group that is working really hard, and I have told the staff and the players to get that consistency, and it shows throughout the organisation that we are heading in the right direction. I mean, that's a fair kind of assessment and a real deflection of, don't look at me, it's a collective here. Is your screen frozen, Alison?
I think he's always been very keen to stress that it requires everyone to pull in the right direction. He wants everyone pulling towards a one common goal. I think that includes coaching staff, fans, players, that everyone has the same focus point. I think last season that was one of the real issues at Celtic. I think there were so many different factions. I think and the kind of chaos around the club and the discord around the club made it very difficult. I think this season what you're seeing is a more harmonious group and people working and coming together with the same objective and the same aim. And I think there is a very clear philosophy about how the manager wants to play, and a very clear philosophy coming all the way down. It's a consistent message that's coming from coaching staff, from the manager, from the players.
Frank Brennan comes in, absolutely a well-deserved, the first of many, I'm sure, Manager of the Month awards for Ange. That remains to be seen, doesn't it, Alison? But I know he's not too keen on stressing the individuality of the award, but it is a decent achievement just 3 months in, to his tenure, or a few months into his tenure,
Of course it is, and I think it's reflective. Of course, and I think it's reflective of the past few weeks. I think since the last international break, it's been much more settled for Celtic. Again, reference that blip at Livingston. I'm not sure entirely where they want to be just yet, but what you can see is it coming together. You can see that there is a very clear way he wants to play, and you can see that the players are buying into it. And I think he's a popular manager. I think, and that comes something just on the back of people wanting you to do well, of almost willing you to succeed, and appreciating where it is that you're coming from in terms of how you want to set up and the kind of football you want to be playing.
David Ballard comes in again. Ange has kept everything smooth, Tony. He's a winner. Well, that remains to be seen. We'll judge that at probably come May. But Ted says Ange's done an amazing job. I hope he's given a new contract before it's too late. Now, the quotes that tickled me, Alison, I think it tickled a lot of Celtic supporters, was when he was asked about the possibility of Steven Gerrard going to Aston Villa. And this is what he said. This is good. I have been laser focused on here, and I will continue to be, and it hasn't been too difficult. People watch TV these days and they binge a series in one night because they don't want to wait another week for the next episode, as we did in the old days. People want to binge on this season as well. One result and it was over, or one result and it was all done. I'm making everybody fully aware that we can't get distracted by anyone or anything, as we are trying to build something here. And when you try to build something and be successful, you can't afford to be looking to what other people are doing. We have got to build our house and make it nice and beautiful and see how it stacks up against the rest of the neighbourhood. I just thought that was a wonderful analogy for saying nothing's going to distract me from what I'm doing here. Let that happen over the other side of the city. I'm not interested. I've got a job here. Oh, seem to have lost Alison. You're back.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. It was just that analogy is brilliant, isn't it? I put it out on the Celtic Way last night and said there was no seagulls or trawlers mentioned before people started to have a pop. But yeah, I mean, I guess it just shows the way he thinks. He is genuinely just concerned about the job at hand.
I think he has to stress that. I think he has to be saying, we need to focus on what we've still got to do. I think Celtic still have a bit of work to do. I think we've spoken about it often here on this platform about the defensive frailties that are evident. I think Celtic are still susceptible to losing goals at times. I think he'll want to eradicate that. You can't be looking at what's going on just now at Rangers, whether Steven Gerrard goes or not, and it looks increasingly likely that he will. But I think he's right to stress that the focus has to stay on what Celtic can control, what they can do, and I don't think they can allow themselves to be distracted by any of that. I think, they're 4 points behind in the league table. I think the ambition is to make sure you go and win the title back. I think last season was a very difficult campaign for many reasons. I think the objective this term was always to go and try and win the title. 4 points means that there's no cushion for Celtic, there's no margin for error. They can't afford really to have another silly draw or to drop points here or there without inviting further pressure. So I think it's imperative that they stick to what they've been doing, and I think he's right to say stop looking over the fence. I will confess I felt old when he was talking about the olden days for waiting a week for a series, because that doesn't seem like too long ago. But yeah, I think you can get exactly what he's pointing to.
Yeah, Frank Brennan comes in against us, a bit of a poet and philosopher as our Ange. Michael Quinn says, how smart was Ange when he spoke yesterday? David Bradley, he says everything well. And Robert Hyland, Ange always speaks well. We spoke about a number of topics, and one of them being, Alison, as well, players coming in January. And this is what he said: I still want to bolster the depth and quality of our squad. Bringing new players in is a constant for me, and I work pretty methodically, and I don't like to rush into things, whether that be current state of affairs or future affairs. That is why the summer transfer window was far too chaotic for me, but I understand that was a situation I was put into, and I don't want that to happen again in January or in the future. That won't happen if we start working methodically, and that will allow us to make business decisions without feeling the pressure of time or any other anxieties. When that happens, you're more likely to get something wrong or do something in haste. Showed a great poker face there, because I think a few names were flung at him and he never bit on anything like that. But he really does seem to be a guy that kind of knows what he wants and knows what he's doing.
I think that's the impression he's given, and I think he won't want to speak publicly about targets for all sorts of reasons. Want just to get his main focus will be ensuring that Celtic are within touching distance of top, that they've not been cast adrift at all, and then you have the resources to go and try and bolster the squad, to bring players in that you think can make an immediate impact at first team level and kick on, because you know that this season that there's not just the carrot of winning the league and claiming the title, but also the fact that it could door to automatic group entry into the Champions League. So it's a huge prize this season. David
Bradley says Tony, we will spend hard cash in January to win this league. Well, that's seemingly the thought process, because they've targeted a few players. Now, players coming in, possibly Rio Hatate and Daisen Maeda, as we've spoken about, but a player possibly heading out, Alison, is goalkeeper Vasilis Barkas. The Greek press are reporting that he's going to go out on loan or a permanent move. in January. It just hasn't worked out for Barkas, has it? 13 appearances under Neil Lennon last year and just the one under Ange in the Champions League against Michelin. I think it is time Celtic cut their losses on the £4.5 million goalkeeper. And Alison has dropped out again. Sure, she'll be back. This is where we should have some elevator music, guys, isn't it? In the meantime, here's some music. Don't know if my singing's up to scratch. But I'll just read a couple of comments out. Robert Highland said the January transfer window is just one of the many things that are chaotic behind the scenes at Celtic. Yes, it has been in the past, Robert. That's very true. And here we have Alison back. Nice one. It's good to have you back.
For now.
Talking about Barkas possibly heading for the exit door, cutting the losses on £4.5 million outlay on the goalkeeper, which has just not worked, has it?
I don't think there's any real surprise that he would look to go elsewhere in January. I think it's in the best interest of the player, and I think it's in the best interest of the club. Whether that's a loan deal or whether it's a permanent deal, I think it makes sense for him to go and play football. He's not going to feature at Celtic. You can't put it this way. You certainly can't see a way back into the first team for him right now.
Well, definitely not. And a name that keeps cropping up, Alison, it's one for the romantics out there if you're a Celtic supporter. You know what I'm going to say. The King of Kings' son, Jordan Larsson, available for £8 million seemingly. Spartak have dropped their 14 million original fee, and West Ham, Borussia Dortmund, and I'm glad that the Swedish reputable newspaper says that Celtic are keeping tabs on it. For the name on the shirt alone, it would probably be worth Celtic's while, but I think people are putting two and two together and coming up with four, really, aren't they, on that one?
Coming up with five, maybe, but yeah, I think so. I think there has been quite a fair bit of interest in him from south of the border. I think Celtic fans have always kept tabs on him ever since he turned professional. I think there was always going to be a keen interest in him. I think many of a certain age would remember him just running about the pitch during that Martin O'Neill era, Henrik Larsson era, when he was just a wee boy and cavorting around the pitch and messing around after games and in title celebrations. And I think they've watched his development from afar, and I think obviously the idea of him coming back and repeating the feats of his dad would be enticing. I'm not sure how much pressure that would put on the boy himself. Or whether or not he would fancy it. I know he spent his formative years in Glasgow. Who knows? Maybe he would fancy a return. But I have to say, I think it is. I think it's probably a little more than just a bit of speculation.
I think it's undue pressure on him because his father scored 242 goals in 315 games in 7 years at Celtic, Alison. And the reason I know that is because I described every one of them for the pullout when he left. When I was working for the Daily Record, there you go. And I got it signed. So a lovely souvenir. But yes, people are coming in and saying, good idea, take for Sorrow to go out on loan. That's Ismail Sorrow to go out on loan. 4 is a magic number, Tony. 4 first-team signings in and 4 players out. 2 and 2 do actually make 4. I was actually trying to Alison corrected me. And Barry comes in. Barkas just never gelled. Maybe it was a combination of language difficulties and COVID combined. It was a weird season for everyone. These players are only kids and it would mess with their head. And the tech guy comes in again. Larsson carries in and just wants a bit romantic, and I'm not a romantic. Well, there you go. I think Ange is more of a realist than a romantic, and he's trying to build something, so that might not appeal to him, Alison, a signing like that.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think the manager will have his targets. We already know that there's been an incredible amount of interest in him going back into the J League. I think the success of Kyogo and what he's achieved in the short time that he's been at Celtic would encourage that. So I think Celtic will already know what their main targets are for January. They'll know, they'll have identified players that they wish to come in. Whether or not you're successful in getting them is a whole other matter. But I think there'll be a short list already.
Frank Brent, with all due respect to Barkas, is a human being, but the facts are that he was a complete disaster of a signing, and please, no kind of loan deal. He must go off the payroll completely. I think if Celtic could manage that and get any kind of fee for him, they would try that, Alison, wouldn't they?
Yeah, it's just not as simple as saying get him off. You need to have a buyer. You need to have someone who can come in. The boy has a contract. He doesn't necessarily have to take it, so it has to be something that appeals to all parties. So it's not always quite as simple as just saying offload him and ease up the wage bill. It's a bit more complicated than that.
Jamie Young comes in with Deadwood. I'm assuming he's referring to Barkas and possibly Sorrow.
On my Wi-Fi.
And Ted comes in with a novel suggestion. Does Kyogo have a boy? There you go. I guess Anne certainly has. He used the word laser focused. That was quite telling for me, that he's just so tunnel visioned on what he wants and what he's going to bring into the team. But one thing's for certain is, I think it's going to be a more organised January transfer window for Celtic, and they will spend money, because, as you've just rightfully said, there's a big bounty at the end of this season, and if Celtic can spend and strengthen the side and win that, then it pays for itself, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think too, he was always going to need at least 2 or 3 windows before assembling the kind of team that he wants and the players that he thinks can play the kind of football that he wants to play. You can see the emphasis on speed and movement and alacrity of thought as much as movement itself. I think that takes certain kind of players. I think he was always going to need a few. There were issues, but I think they didn't factor in the sale of Odsonne Edouard, of Chris Ayer, of Ryan Christie. So I think Celtic will be back in profit when you see the next set of accounts. I think there will be funds there, resources there to go and build on the squad. And I think the main objective is just to keep that focus. I think if you're going to be successful as a manager, as a player, I think that's one of the requisites. I think you have to have that kind of tunnel vision.
Ismail Sorrow is getting a lot of the comments here saying the tech man comes in. Sorrow is talented, but looks a bit phased playing in the bigger games. Needs a run of games at a lower level to iron out some technical and composure. He's a player, again, that's one man's opinion. And Kyogo Furuhashi comes in. Spurs were looking at Sorrow. There might be a player in there. I just think that there may possibly be a player in Sorrow, but I just think he's a player that Ange maybe just doesn't fancy. Alison? Alison's Wi-Fi gone again. Sorry guys, Alison's having real technical issues today. I'll just keep reading out your comments. Michael Quinn comes in. If Larsson boy comes in, wow, we're always romantic. Yes, well, there you go. And Frank Brennan says, and I completely knows that a competent and efficient January transfer window prepares us for the Champions League later on in the year. I would agree with that, Frank, as well. I think most Celtic supporters would have been delighted with his comments yesterday on the progress being made so far and the way things are going, and poised to strike in the transfer market again in January. It's ticking along rather nicely. See if Alison's back with us. You still there, Alison? James Rees comes in and says, come on Spurs, we're never looking at Sorrow. You're back, Alison. Yes.
I'm having a Wi-Fi
problems. Right. Will McMillan comes in here and says, if Sorrow, Barkas, Haggerty, etc. were going to make it, it would have happened by now. I think there's a feeling amongst a lot of Celtic supporters that there's a grain of truth in that, Alison.
I think they've all had an opportunity at first team level to prove what they've got and to showcase their credentials for a more regular first team inclusion. I think when it's not happening, I think it makes sense to go elsewhere and to make sure that you're playing.
And Frank Brennan throws a curveball at us, Alison. Xander Clark in his cover for Big Joe Hart. What's your thoughts on that? I know he's been linked with a move to the other side of the city as well, hasn't he? So
I like him as a goalkeeper. I think he's excellent. I think I've seen him often. I've been impressed with him. He's a big personality too. I think he would want to play first team football. I think wherever he goes, he would want to be going in as first choice at this stage in his career. He's kind of pushing for that Scotland position. He's just been called up into Steve Clarke's squad. I think it will be important for him to go and play regularly if he's to move away from McDiarmid Park.
I agree totally with that. And I'll let you go, Alison, because you're having horrendous Wi-Fi problems, and we'll wrap it up just now. But thanks for your comments, guys. We always appreciate it, especially today. Hopefully Alison's Wi-Fi will be better tomorrow. And we'll maybe have a wee emotional one tomorrow, Alison, because we'll ask people their reflections and memories of Tommy Burns, because the Tommy Burns story's been running all week at the Kerrydale Suite. So we'll get hopefully some nice chat from that tomorrow as well. Thanks for your contribution. I know it was tough for you there, a hard 20 minutes here. But and guys, if you're watching on YouTube, remember and hit the like and the subscribe button, and you'll get access to all the top quality journalism on the site covering the club you love. Thanks very much.